Have you ever felt like you don't quite fit in anywhere? Too young for some groups, too old for others? Yeah, if you were born between 1976 and 1985, there's actually a name for that feeling. You're called a Xennial. Not quite Gen X, not quite a Millennial, something in between. And the last thing we cover today is the most important one. It explains why people like you might be better at handling change than almost anyone else alive. So stick around for that one. Quick question before we start. Do you remember life before the internet? Yes or no? Drop it in the comments. Let's find out who's in the room. Here's the big idea. Most people grow up in one world and stay there. They either grew up with technology or they grew up without it. But Xennials did something rare. They grew up in both. First, an analog world with rotary phones, past notes in class, and favorite TV shows you had to watch at exactly the right time or miss forever. Then, right as they were becoming adults, the whole world went digital. Not slowly, suddenly. Think about what that actually means. In your teenage years, if you were running late to meet a friend, you couldn't text. You just showed up and hoped they were still there. That took real trust, real commitment. But then, in your 20s, mobile phones arrived. Then Friendster, then MySpace, then Facebook. And you just figured it out because your brain was still in its most flexible, learning-ready stage. Scientists call this high brain plasticity, and Xennials were right in the middle of it when the entire world changed. This created something scientists call technological bilingualism. You can have a real face-to-face conversation without checking your phone every 30 seconds. But you also don't panic when new software arrives. You're comfortable in both worlds, the old and the new, in a way that most people simply aren't. Here's something that surprises people. Xennials also have a completely different relationship with their memories. Growing up before social media meant that embarrassing moments just faded. That bad haircut in 7th grade, it only lives in the stories people tell, not in a searchable photo album online forever. Your memories could change and grow the way human memories are supposed to. You weren't trapped by documentation. That's actually really healthy. Which of these things do you relate to most? Drop it in the comments. I want to know. But here's where it gets complicated. A lot of Xennials entered the job market right around the 2008 financial crisis, one of the worst economic moments in recent history. Just when they were supposed to be building their careers, the ground disappeared. And research shows that financial hardship during these specific years leaves a mark that doesn't easily go away. It shapes how you think about money, safety, and risk, even long after things get better. So Xennials learned to adapt to huge change, but they were also burned right when they were trying to build something stable. That combination is real, and almost nobody talks about it. You ended up with this unusual mix, the independence of someone who grew up solving problems on their own, because your parents often didn't know where you were for hours, and that was totally fine, combined with the open-mindedness of someone who watched technology promise to connect and improve everything. You learned to hold two opposite things at once without it feeling strange. Independent but cooperative, skeptical but hopeful, digital but analog. And now, the last point, the one that matters most. Xennials lived through one of the biggest changes in human history, and they came out the other side knowing something the rest of us are still figuring out: how to adapt without losing yourself in the process. You saw what was gained. You also remember what was lost. The ability to be truly alone with your thoughts, the patience that comes from waiting, the kind of presence that existed before there was always something else competing for your attention. You hold both of those things at the same time, and that is not a weakness. That is a skill, one of the most valuable ones there is. So if you've always felt like you're between worlds, too old for some things, too young for others, that's not something wrong with you. That's what it looks like when a person learns to adapt, and you already know how to do it.